Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here. Welcome to the 51st episode of Dirty Chess Tricks. In this episode, I'm going to show you one of the wonderful tricky line against Queens Gambit Accepted, which you definitely want to consider playing in professional tournament practice. The opening arises after the following order: d4, d5, c4, and now black accept the pawn with d capture c4. The main line runs with knight to f3, which stopped the e5 idea by black. However, in this video, I am going to propose this straightforward move, e3. So what white wants to do is, he wants his pawn back with bishop capture c4, and accordingly, black has two famous choices. There is a famous blunder at this position which I think everybody should know. If your opponent becomes greedy and hang on to this extra pawn with the move b5, then he is seriously asking for the trouble after the move a4. Obviously black cannot play a6, so if he wants to hang on to his extra material, then he has to play c6, but after pawn captures and pawn captures, white has this lethal move, queen to f3, which by force on the 7th move win the piece and in fact the game. Now if your opponent continue at this point with knight to f6, then my recommendation is you should continue with knight to f3. And if you remember, I have covered a trappy line in my Chess Trap 19. So if you haven't checked it out, I strongly insist you to go through that video and learn a nasty line against the move knight to f6. However, in this video we are going to concentrate on one of the most other popular choice, namely e5. Here white should capture on c4, and after pawn captures and pawn captures, yes, indeed we have the isolated queen pawn position, but the one which is very favorable to the white camp. The good point I like about this variation is, it is more about the piece placement and tactical ideas rather than memorization of the pieces. So for example, in the majority of cases, both the sides develop their piece on the natural squares, and afterwards it is all about the understanding of the position, and as we will see, some good tactical ideas and nice follow-ups. Here it doesn't matter whether black continue with bishop to d6 or knight f6. Let's say in this game black plays bishop to d6 first, white continue with knight to f3, knight to f6, both the side castles, and now h3, a nice move which prevents bishop to g4 idea by black, and accordingly black also play h6, which stop bishop to g5 idea by white. Okay, now it's done for the knight. Both the b knights comes to the natural square, knight to c3, knight to c6. And if you check out this position in database, this happens in more than 1000 times. Well, we have reached one of the most critical junction of this variation, and here my recommendation is you should start with this tricky move, queen to c2. So as you can see, I have highlighted by the arrows, white has a very cunning idea, namely he wants to play bishop captures h6, and after pawn takes, queen to g6 looks pretty nasty for the black camp. As per the database, the most popular choice by black is to play knight to b4, attacking the queen, and after queen to b1. As I have highlighted over here, black has tried these two moves frequently. In fact, bishop to e6 has been tried in more than 50 games, where c6 has been tried in 35 games. Well, I must admit that bishop to e6, I don't like this move. The simple reason is, after bishop captures e6 and pawn captures e6, it is a case where both the side has a mutual weaknesses, but for white it is easy to get on the e6 pawn, where for black it is very difficult to get the d4 pawn. Anyways, I have attached a model game in the PGA which will give you a very good idea how to exploit the e6 pawn and in fact go for the win. In this video, we are more concentrating on the move c6, which is the second most popular choice by black in this position. Black's idea is very simple. He wants to play knight to d5, blockade the d4 pawn, and slowly exchanging the pieces and go into the endgame where this d4 pawn is a clear-cut target. Well, yup, that's a good thought, except there is a huge problem in this variation, namely bishop captures h6, bam! So suddenly white emerged with an extra pawn, and if black doesn't capture this bishop, then queen to g6 is a nasty reply. So accordingly, black has to accept this piece sacrifice, and after that, yup, you guessed it, it's a queen check, and after king to h8 and queen captures h6. If you calculate the material at this point, white has a 2 pawn for a bishop, but the most important is white has some lethal attack going on the black naked king, which is over the board, not easy to stop. Black has two choices. Amongst them, king to g8 is a pretty bad one. The simple reason is, after knight to g5, the f7 pawn is a great target, and black cannot even play knight to d5, as after simple knight captures d5, the resulting position is quite better for the white. So as per the engine, the only resource which can save the black camp is bishop to f5. So that bishop is covering some important squares. However, after the following sequence, knight captures f7, rook captures f7, queen to g5 check. If the king goes to the h file, then the rook on f7 will hangs. So accordingly, black king has to go to the f8 square. Afterwards, you guessed it. Yup, very simple. Bishop captures f7, king captures f7, and the move queen captures f5. After the whole transaction, white obtained a rook and a 3 connected passer, which is obviously a great deciding winning factor. Okay, so knight to h7 is the only logical reply. Afterwards, white is going to continue with this forcing sequence, knight to e4, attacking twice on d6 bishop, and bishop has to go to the e7 in order to control the g5 square. Well, it looks like white attack has been stopped and black has consolidated his position, but this is where our tricky business comes into the picture, as white has this amazing attacking reply, knight to e5. So as you can see, white is already threatening knight captures f7, and accordingly black has tried these 3 replies. Let's see against each of them how white create a winning attack. The first move I want to consider is queen captures d4, which is pretty bad one, even though it looks like the obvious move, attacking 2 knights, which at first sight looks very threatening. But after white's next reply, knight captures f7, the sequence is pretty much forced. We are following a game between two 2300 plus rated opponents, where black continue with the obvious move, rook captures f7, and after bishop captures f7, black take the knight on e4. So for a time being, black has 3 pieces against a rook, and it looks like black is doing so good, right? But it is just an illusion, as after white's next reply, rook a to e1, attacking 2 piece. So black response is force. Black has to play queen to h4 in order to safeguard his piece. But even after this move, black is not out of the wood, as the simple queen captures queen and bishop captures. White has this winning move, rook to e4, which by force get one of the piece back, and after bishop to f6 and rook captures b4, it turns out that once again we have the same scenario where black has this 2 minor piece against 3 connected pass pawn and a rook, which is always going to favor the white camp. You can check out rest of the game in the PGA, which in fact lasts only 31 moves, where white finishes opponent in a style. The second move I want to consider is knight to d5, which was in fact the original choice of the black camp. But I'm afraid in this variation this is not the right choice, as white has this devastating move f4. So idea is very simple. White wants to play knight to g5, and if black capture it, then white will recapture with the f pawn, and which will unleash the attack on the f7 pawn. Not to mention there are some rook lift idea by white also in the air. So accordingly, the best response goes here with bishop to f5, not only supporting h7 but hitting the knight on e4. Okay, no issues. We are going to play knight to g5, attacking twice on f7 and giving black only 2 choices. If black take this knight, then the simplest is you take back with the pawn, attacking the bishop, and after bishop to g6, white has few nice continuation, but amongst all of them I like this move most, as it stemmed the victory immediately with bishop to d3, destroying the defender of the f7 pawn. And believe it or not, to survive from this mess, black has the only nice choice, namely queen captures g5. But even after this move, white obtained the winning advantage with queen captures g5, knight captures g5, and the move bishop captures g6, which gives him a healthy pawn advantage. The reason why black cannot take this bishop, because after the following sequence, knight captures g6, king to g7, rook captures f8, attacking the rook in the corner, so black response is force. Black has to take this rook, and after knight takes and king takes, as we seen in the earlier positions, again and again we are getting this with 2 pawn and a rook against 2 minor piece, which is always going to be a difficult task when those connected pawns are the distant passer. So if bishop captures g5 is not working, how about king to g8, defending this pawn? Now we are going to follow a game between 2 grandmasters, where white responds with this very aggressive move g4. This bishop doesn't have any square to go, and the problem is he cannot move as there is a mate on h7. So obviously after a long think, black come up with this tactical idea, queen to b6, sacrificing the bishop in order to create complication. But as it turns out that it only favors the white. White first of all captured this piece, threatening mate on h7, but black revealed his trump with queen captures d4 check, and after rook to f2, his idea is he wants to destroy this knight on g5, and after pawn takes, it doesn't matter whether black try to capture the piece back or to play bishop to c5, which happens in the game. White response is very obvious, and I think you saw it, right? Yup, that nasty mating net with f6. And how the hell on earth black is going to save the mate? Well, I guess black's idea was this: he wants to capture this rook, and after king to h1, obviously there is no check in this position, but black has this continuation, namely knight captures f6, and after pawn takes, he played queen to g3, which not only protecting the g7 square, but right now white can't even take on g1. And if you look at this position, black is an exchange up. So isn't black survived the white attack? Well, of course not. After white's next reply, there is a forcing mate. So before I show it to you, I want you to pause this video and find out that killer move which finish up the black camp. Did you find it? Let's see. The move is bishop to d3 and checkmate is unavoidable. In the game he tried rook to d8, but after queen check, king to f8 and queen f7, actually black king is mated on the board. Probably the most critical response here by black is to play bishop to f5, which attacking the knight on e4. However, white has an equally strong move, queen to f4, attacking the bishop. Well, it is wise to get rid of as many as pieces to reduce white attack, so bishop captures e4 is a logical response. Afterwards, white will recapture it. So at this point, white has a clear threat of knight captures f7, so accordingly, black needs to stop it with knight to d5. And once again, white will renew it with queen to f5. Now, if your opponent plays knight to f6 or queen to e8 in this position, then white has a very nice move, namely rook to e1, and that rook will swing across to the king side with rook to e4, and resulting position are quite favorable to the white camp. So accordingly, the best response for the black is to play queen to c8, attacking the queen. Well, white would love to play knight to f7, but king to g7 spoiled the party, so for a time being, white has to play queen to h5. I got this position against a FIDE master in a rapid game, where my strong opponent continued with queen to e6. So his idea is very simple. The queen is quickly coming on the king side to rescue the king, and also denying some critical squares to the white camp. Well, no issues. I continue with rook a to e1, creating an x-ray on the king. And because right now there is no threat on the queen, my opponent responds with rook to d8. Okay, it's always good to create a mating threat, so I played bishop to d3, threatening a checkmate on h7. Also, there's a threat of knight to g6 and winning the queen in some lines. So accordingly, black played the only move which keeps him in the game, namely knight to f6, defending as well as attacking on my queen. And I calmly played queen to h6. So now the threat is very obvious, knight to g6, and the black queen is a goner. So he played queen to d6. And round about here, it looks like white has no attack to speak of, and there is no great deal of compensation for losing a piece. However, sometimes attacking positions have some hidden resources, and this is not apart from it, as at this point, white has a winning move which kills the black on the spot. Before I move on, last time guys, I want you to pause this video and find out that killer punch which finish off the black. Okay then, I hope you find this killer blow. Boom! What a move! So white is sacrificing the second bishop and black can't even touch it. Why? Let me show you why. If pawn captures g6, then the simplest is knight captures g6 check, king to g8, knight captures e7 check, king to h8, and now the winning blow, knight to f5. Threatening two things. The only logical response is queen to c7, but now rook to e7, and in order to save the mate, black has to give up the queen. And even after so, black position will not last for long. In the game, my opponent wisely played queen to d5, which once again safeguarding the f7. But then I give him this ultimate shock, bishop captures f7. Attacking the queen, black response is force, he has to take this bishop. Afterwards, I deliver this winning sequence, knight to g6 check, king to g8, knight captures e7 check. Black has to take this knight, and after rook captures e7, there are multiple ways the mate has been threatened, and the only way to parry these mates are queen to g5, counter-attacking the white queen. But white will be more than happy to exchange this queen, as after queen takes, knight takes, and the move rook captures b7. In the final position, you can see that white has a 1 rook, 4 pawn, and anyone who is good at chess can easily convert these positions into the full point. That's it guys, I hope you enjoy and learn this tricky line in the Queen's Gambit Accepted from the white perspective. Once you will try in your own game, you will see the real potential of this line, and in the tournament practice, with the clock ticking on the board and with some great preparation, you can definitely win some nice points. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment on this, and I'll meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.